Well, the reason is, like I said, so back to the open hand and the closed fist. What usually happens, I'm speaking from experience, this is true of everybody, right? What usually happens in the awakening process is we begin like this, of course, and some of us, most people don't ever question this. They are born and they die believing they are a separate self, most people. And then some of us lucky ones, for whatever reason, we start to question it. We start to think there must be something more to life than this, you see? And then we become spiritual seekers. And we start reading and going to teachers and maybe doing crazy things like this, coming on retreats like this, right? And then the hand starts to open. Right? So as I was saying, depending on, there's a whole range of teachers and teachings out there, right? They're not all the same. But if we do wake up, if we do experience an authentic awakening, that can be symbolized by we recognize that the deeper reality of who we are is not the body and the mind, right? But most spiritual teachings tend to stop there. If they're true teachings and they're profound, they can take you to that place, that recognition. But then it's not very common to find a teaching that really embraces the whole picture, which is well, what about all of this? Do you see? And that's why the main existential challenge for most spiritual seekers is, there's my spiritual self, okay, I have some sense of that, I can get in touch with that. And then there's my, quote, everyday life. And there's usually this very big gap between the two, or there's some sense of a dilemma. Do you see? And that's because it's also the fault of if the teaching is not complete. You see that then when we would get off our cushion, in a metaphor, we will basically retreat back. Maybe it's not going to be so tight, right? But we still retreat back to fundamentally believing that we're a separate body-mind. But I'm a bit more open now. I'm a bit more not so sure. There's a bit more room for some spontaneity, for some love, for some creativity that wasn't there before. You see, so there are degrees to this. But usually the fundamental center of gravity goes back to being a separate self. And that's why we continue to seek. Because as long as our fundamental center of gravity is I'm a separate self, even if I've had lots of revelations and depth and understandings, as long as I fundamentally fall back there, I'll still be unhappy. There will still be a sense that something is missing, and I'll still be seeking. You see? And then what happens usually is that spiritual seekers get attached to their meditation or to their spiritual practice. That's kind of, I need to get out of all of this. You see? And there's some attachment to this movement into being, into eternity, into peace. You see? But there's often an ambivalence in relationship to creation. You see?
Is anybody feeling like they want to hold on to the silence that you've had for the last 5 days while we're starting to talk about all this? Has anybody had that? Because that's exactly what he's talking about. No, I want to hold on to my spiritual silence and stillness, and I don't want to talk about this being stuff and actually use my mind or let go of my mind, because he's actually asking you to let go of the mind, but somehow you have to cognize in a different way than you have in the last 5 days. So if you see that movement of wanting to hold on to it, you should recognize it right now and realize that that's the wrong direction.
Or just don't hold on. Don't be afraid that you're going to lose that. But also to put this in the context of the spiritual traditions, right? If you look at the spiritual traditions, East and West, right, they tend to be monastic, right? If you get really serious about it, you become a swami or a monk. This is traditionally, not so much these days. And you leave the world. You renounce the world. You become celibate. You don't have money. Why? You have to see that those traditions, they grew out of this bias towards the uncreated, the eternal, the pure being dimension, you see. Because the spiritual traditions historically have tended to say, that's God, that's the truth, that's consciousness, and all this stuff, body, mind, world, that's not me, not who I am, yeah, not this, not that. Yeah. And therefore it's an illusion. It's an illusion, so I just step out of it. I withdraw. You see, and the physical, you could say a physical expression of that in terms of a lifestyle is becoming a monk or a nun. So I just want you to appreciate where that comes from in terms of the traditions.
But if you don't want to be a monk or a nun, you want to be interested in what we're talking about now.
Right. So I nearly became a monk some year. Thank God I didn't. I probably wouldn't be here talking to you like this now. Right? But for most of us in the Westerners, especially Westerners in the 21st century, there's an intuitive sense, there's a recognition. No, I want to live in the world. I want to be free in the world. This matters. Yeah? I don't just want to escape. So this is, if you're interested in that, then you need to stretch into this kind of contemplation that I'm sharing with you. And the effort involved is just a stretch, because it's nothing to do with a mental process of figuring it out. It's actually stretching. The stretch is to let go of your unexamined presumptions. You see? That's the stretch. It's like, what does he mean? He said that there's no objective pre-existing world. What?
How many people just kind of bypass that one?
You see, because
Yeah, sure. That's
the unexamined presumption is, well, oh, that's a groovy spiritual idea, but I mean, come on.
Let's
get
talk
real.
reality here.
You know? I'm just, that might be, that's the presumption. You see, the stretch is to lean into that and go, not to believe it, not to believe me, but just to lean into it and go, is that true? What is my own direct experience? No belief, not what somebody else tells you. What is my direct experience, really? Have I ever experienced the world without me being there to perceive it? Has anybody ever experienced the world? Do you see? Most people don't ever ask themselves these questions. And so we just carry on living in the dream of like, yeah, I'm just a little me, little separate body, mind, me, and here we are in this big, scary place.
What to do?